Across the African continent, a new wind is blowing. It carries with it the spirit of change, the yearning for self-determination, and a rejection of outside interference. From the bustling streets of Ouagadougou to the halls of power in other African capitals, one name is on everyone's lips: Captain Ibrahim Traoré. This young military officer, thrust into the spotlight by a series of dramatic events in Burkina Faso, has become a symbol of hope for a continent seeking to chart its own course. The Sahel region, a vast expanse stretching across Africa just south of the Sahara Desert, has long been plagued by instability, poverty, and violence. Burkina Faso, a landlocked nation in the heart of the Sahel, has been particularly hard hit. Years of economic hardship, political turmoil, and a brutal insurgency have left many feeling disillusioned and desperate for change. Captain Traoré's rise to prominence is inextricably linked to these challenges. He represents a new generation of Africans, disillusioned with the old ways of doing things and determined to take control of their own destiny. His message of pan-Africanism, self-reliance, and resistance to neocolonialism has resonated deeply with millions across the continent and its diaspora. The international community, accustomed to dictating terms and imposing its will on African nations, has been caught off guard by this surge of popular support for Captain Traoré. Accusations and attempts to discredit him have only served to further galvanize his supporters, who see in him a true champion of African interests. Captain Traoré's appeal lies not only in his rhetoric but also in his actions. Since assuming power, he has tackled corruption, improved governance, and prioritized the fight against terrorism. His commitment to social justice and economic development has earned him respect. Unlike previous leaders, he connects with the people he serves. He listens to their grievances and seeks their input on national matters. This approach has endeared him to the masses. In Captain Traoré, many see a leader who understands their struggles and is committed to improving their lives. Captain Ibrahim Traoré's story is not one of privilege or political dynasties. He hails from the humble town of Kaya in north-central Burkina Faso, a region grappling with poverty and the constant threat of terrorism. Born in 1988, Traoré grew up witnessing the struggles of his people. These experiences ignited within him a deep-seated desire for change. Traoré joined the military, excelling in his training and rising quickly through the ranks. His dedication and strategic mind did not go unnoticed. He received further training at prestigious institutions. His education equipped him with crucial tactical knowledge and leadership skills. Traoré's military career was marked by bravery and commitment. He served in various capacities, including the artillery regiment and special forces. His field experience exposed him to the impact of terrorism and the plight of civilians. He witnessed the government's shortcomings in security. The turning point came in January 2022. Discontent within the military led to a coup d'état, ousting President Kabore. This event set the stage for Traoré's rise to prominence, marking a new chapter in Burkina Faso's political landscape. Following the January 2022 coup, Paul-Henri Sandaogo Damiba assumed the role of interim president. Traoré was appointed head of the MPSR's Special Forces Unit in the country's west. This region, bordering Mali and Niger, was a hotbed of jihadist activity. Traoré led his troops from the front lines, earning their respect. Despite leadership changes, Burkina Faso's security situation deteriorated. The jihadist insurgency gained ground, expanding their control. The Damiba government seemed unable to stem the violence. Disillusionment set in among the populace. Within the MPSR, cracks began to appear. Traoré and a faction of officers grew critical of Damiba's leadership. They perceived his strategies as ineffective. On September 30, 2022, Traoré seized power in a bloodless coup. The swiftness of the coup took many by surprise. Traoré was suddenly thrust into the national spotlight. He addressed the nation, citing the worsening security situation. He cited Damiba's failure and the need for a decisive approach. His words resonated with many, weary of the escalating violence. From the outset, Captain Traoré presented himself as a different kind of leader. He eschewed the trappings of power, preferring simple attire and direct communication. He pledged to prioritize the fight against terrorism, tackle corruption, and improve the lives of ordinary Burkinabé. His message, devoid of political grandstanding, struck a chord with a population yearning for security and stability. Traoré's vision for Burkina Faso extends beyond just military solutions. He has repeatedly stressed the need for national unity and a collective effort to overcome the country's challenges. He has called for a return to traditional values of solidarity and self-reliance, urging citizens to resist the divisive forces that threaten to tear the nation apart. Central to Traoré's vision is a commitment to pan-Africanism and a rejection of foreign interference. He has criticized the role of former colonial powers in the region, accusing them of perpetuating instability and exploiting Africa's resources. He has called for greater cooperation among African nations, advocating for solutions driven by Africans themselves, free from external influence. Traoré's stance has resonated across the continent, particularly among young people who see in him a symbol of hope and a departure from the old guard. His message of self-determination and resistance to neocolonialism has struck a chord with a generation disillusioned by the legacy of colonialism and the perceived hypocrisy of Western powers. While the challenges facing Burkina Faso are immense, Captain Traoré's unwavering commitment to his people and his vision for a stronger, more independent Burkina Faso have ignited a sense of hope in a nation yearning for peace and progress. While Captain Ibrahim Traoré projected an image of strength and determination, discontent brewed beneath the surface. Not everyone in Burkina Faso's military or political circles agreed with his leadership style or strategic decisions. Rumors of dissent within the armed forces began to circulate, whispers in the marketplace and hushed conversations behind closed doors. Some felt that Traoré's focus on national sovereignty and his criticism of foreign involvement alienated potential allies in the fight against the insurgency. Others questioned his strategies, arguing that a more nuanced approach was needed, one that incorporated diplomacy and addressed the root causes of the conflict. The complexities of the insurgency, with its interwoven factors of poverty, ethnic tensions and religious extremism, demanded a multifaceted response, they argued, not just a military solution. These whispers of dissent grew louder, as the security situation in Burkina Faso remained volatile. Despite Traoré's commitment to combating terrorism, the jihadist groups continued to operate, launching attacks on civilians and military targets alike. The ongoing violence fueled a sense of anxiety and uncertainty, creating fertile ground for opposition to take root. Within the military, factions loyal to the previous regime under Damiba still existed. They resented Traoré's takeover and viewed him as an usurper who had disrupted the chain of command and destabilized the country further. These disgruntled elements within the army saw an opportunity to regain power and restore what they perceived as the rightful order. On Friday, October 13, 2023, these simmering tensions erupted into the open. A group of soldiers claiming allegiance to the patriotic movement for safeguard and restoration, but disillusioned with Traoré's leadership, launched a coup attempt. The news spread like wildfire through the capital, Ouagadougou, a mix of fear and confusion gripping the city. The coup plotters, led by a young officer named Captain Kiswansida Farouk Azaria Sorgo, stormed the headquarters of the state broadcaster, RTB, seizing control of the airwaves. From there, they broadcast a message to the nation, announcing the dissolution of the transitional government led by Captain Traoré and the suspension of the constitution. Sorgo, in his address, accused Traoré of failing to address the deteriorating security situation and of isolating Burkina Faso from its international partners. He promised to restore order, improve governance, and prioritize the fight against terrorism, echoing the very promises Traoré had made a year earlier. The coup attempt, however, was short-lived. It quickly became apparent that Sorgo and his faction did not have the widespread support they had anticipated. The majority of the Burkinabe armed forces remained loyal to Traoré, viewing the coup as an act of treason and a dangerous distraction from the critical task of combating the insurgency. Within hours of the coup announcement, loyalist forces mobilized to counter the rebellion. Clashes erupted in several parts of Ouagadougou, gunfire echoing through the streets as the two sides exchanged fire. The international airport was closed, and the government imposed a curfew, urging citizens to remain indoors for their safety. The speed and decisiveness with which Traoré's loyalists responded took the coup plotters by surprise. They had miscalculated the level of support they enjoyed within the military, and had underestimated the resolve of Traoré and his inner circle. As the day wore on, it became increasingly clear that the coup attempt was faltering. By Friday evening, the tide had turned decisively in favor of the government. Loyalist forces regained control of key strategic locations, including the state broadcaster, and began rounding up those involved in the coup attempt. Captain Sorgo, the face of the short-lived rebellion, was apprehended, along with several of his co-conspirators. In the aftermath of the failed coup, Captain Traoré addressed the nation, his voice weary but firm. He condemned the coup attempt as a cowardly act that had jeopardized the hard-won stability of the country and diverted crucial resources away from the fight against terrorism. He vowed to hold those responsible accountable for their actions, and reaffirmed his commitment to leading Burkina Faso towards a more secure and prosperous future. The dust had barely settled on the failed coup attempt in Ouagadougou when accusations began to fly from Washington, D.C. U.S. officials quickly pointed fingers at Russia, alleging involvement in the unrest. They claimed the Wagner Group, a Russian private military company, had instigated the coup. The accusations aimed to discredit Captain Traoré and his government. By framing the coup as external interference, the U.S. deflected from internal grievances fueling the unrest. Africa swiftly rejected U.S. accusations, emphasizing Pan-African solidarity and condemning neocolonial interference. Social media buzzed with support for Burkina Faso, rejecting external meddling. The African diaspora united globally, denouncing U.S. imperialism and supporting Captain Traoré. Hashtags like #HandsOff Burkina Faso trended, amplifying their message. The Sahel region faces poverty, climate change, and extremism. Captain Traoré's Pan-African message resonates amid these challenges. The G5 Sahel, formed in 2014, aims to combat terrorism and promote development. Despite challenges, it fosters regional cooperation and dialogue. Captain Traoré's leadership energizes the G5 Sahel, advocating for African solutions. His vision aligns with Mali, shifting the alliance's stance towards independence. Traoré's rise redefines African sovereignty, emphasizing economic independence and self-determination. He embodies a new generation of leaders rejecting neo-colonial interference. The multipolar world offers African nations new partnerships and challenges. Leaders like Traoré must navigate this landscape to prioritize Africa's development. Genuine sovereignty comes at a price, with Western powers likely to resist. Traoré must build strong institutions and partnerships to defend African interests. Traoré's rise signals Africa's awakening, demanding leaders who prioritize their needs. The momentum for self-determination and economic justice is undeniable. The legacy of Captain Traoré will be shaped by the ideals he embodies and the movements he inspires. His impact is undeniable. Traoré has shown that a different path is possible. He has ignited a spark of hope, reminding the world that Africa's potential is limitless. The world is watching, some with skepticism, but many with newfound respect. The story of Captain Ibrahim Traoré is the story of a continent awakening to its own power. Africa will never be the same.